Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm reacting to Prohibition by OverSimplified. For those of you who didn't know, Prohibition was a time period where alcohol was illegal in the United States. I believe it was only the United States who had this, but maybe someone else did as well, I don't know. This video is about the US, I'm pretty sure. So let's watch it.
Good morning, honey. What's for breakfast? The usual. 2 caskets of rum, a mug of hard cider, and a full bottle of wine. Oh boy!
That's a lot of alcohol.
Oh, I'm running late. I'll have to
for
take
breakfast.
Don't forget your lunch. It's a 6-pack of beer, a flask of whiskey, 6 shots of tequila, and as a special treat,
Jeez.
a banana. Oh, gee whiz. I'm gonna be
The
smashed
only actual
today.
food.
Enjoy your day of operating sharp, dangerous farm equipment. I can't believe this is an acceptable way to live. God bless America. Okay, gotta go.
Is this what it actually looked like in the US? Because this is terrible.
I love my life!
I'm starting to understand why they banned alcohol, if that's how
America,
much they drank.
The land of beautiful strip malls, top-class infrastructure, and wonderful urban sprawl. Ah, yes.
Yeah, it's all
Beautiful
terrible.
America. But what's the most American thing you can think of? The Statue of Liberty? Mount Rushmore? A crazy lady in a mobility scooter yelling at a pigeon? Well, what if I told you the answer is alcohol?
That last one is what most represents America today.
That's right. When the Puritans arrived on America's
Just
shores,
crazy,
they brought a ship
insane
packed
people.
with beer. George Washington provided his men with a daily cup of whiskey. Andrew Jackson's inauguration party left the White House so trashed that everybody had to be ordered outside. Frederick Douglass said whiskey made him feel like a president. Me too, Frederick. Me too. Americans drink at breakfast. Doctors prescribe their patients hard liquor. In the 19th century, Americans drank 3 times as much
Doctors
as their modern-day
prescribe hard
counterparts.
liquor.
That's a lot of whiskey. Hey, Jerry, how's that report coming along? Already as much as their modern-day
6 to 7 gallons of pure alcohol per year. I don't drink alcohol, so I don't know how much that is, and I also don't know how much a gallon is, but it's a lot, I assume. 2 gallons still sounds like a lot to me, but 6 to 7?
counterparts. That's a lot
Good
of whiskey.
Lord.
Hey, Jerry, how's that report coming along? Already done, sir. I've also organized your paperwork, watered your flowers, and been a father figure to your children. Wait a minute. What's that smell?
Hold on, what
Have you
was the
been
last
drinking
one
at
supposed to
work?
be?
No, sir, I would never. Well, why not? Everyone else is doing it, but I got all my work done. You're fired!
So you want him to drink.
Americans drink at work. They drink at barn raisings, baptisms, and public hangings. Heavy drinking was so normal that it was
Public
as American
hangings.
as apple pie.
Public hangings, what a great activity. Fun for the whole family. You can drink as well.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ron, and I'm an alcoholic. Get over yourself, Ron. We're all alcoholics. But more and more Americans began to wonder whether all of this truly was a normal way to live. Were Americans
No,
drinking
not in the
perhaps
slightest.
a little too much? Well, one group in particular
8
thought the
a.m.
answer to that was yes. Perhaps a
Imagine
little
being
too
pissed
much?
drunk at
Well, one
8
group in
a.m.
particular thought the answer to that
Jesus
was
Christ,
yes.
that's ridiculous.
You know him? You love him. Woman. Oh, crap. Woman! Run! Hang on. We just want to
Average
talk.
reaction to seeing a woman.
In public? That's outrageous. Come on, Fred. You've got 2
Women
kids and a
talking in
wife at
public?
home, yet here you
That's
are spending
outrageous.
your entire paycheck on booze. And you, Dr. Spanky, you were on the cusp of discovering time travel. But what did you discover instead? The sweet, sweet joys of whiskey. That's right. Alcohol. It's destroying our families, our jobs, and our homes. She's right.
I mean, that's true.
Hang on, men. Don't let them get to you. This saloon is our safe space where our wives and children can't annoy us with reality, where we're free to be real men. He's right. He's right. I am a man. And what does it real men do? Take care of their families. I don't know what she's talking about. Do you take care of your family? No. We drink beer, we shoot guns, and we mud wrestle. As America's heavy drinking ruined more and more lives, moral resistance began to arise, and women were at the forefront, taking matters into their own hands at a time when women doing just about anything was shocking. They'd had enough of being victim to their husband's heavy drinking, and they were going to do something
year is this?
unprecedented. You're going to what? I'm going
I think it's at the 19th century, so the 1800s.
to protest.
Good joke. Women can't protest.
Oh, sweetie, women can't protest.
See? I told you.
Starting in Ohio before spreading nationwide, women began a crusade against alcohol. They marched through towns and
1873.
cities, singing hymns, gathering outside saloons, and praying on their knees. Women praying was so terrifying that in some towns schools were shut and business stagnated. On one occasion, firemen were called out to hose down the dangerous praying women. On another, the owner of a beer garden reportedly held a cannon outside and threatened to reduce the savage women to dust.
I mean, it makes sense. He sells beer. Of course he wants to get rid of them.
In 1874, and they organized. They set up homes for inebriate women. They installed water fountains in public parks. They wrote textbooks. They set up...
Women drank as well? Didn't he say earlier that women doing anything was seen as insane? So how are they allowed to drink?
Up homes for inebriate women. They installed water fountains in public parks. They wrote textbooks for school children that contained some interesting claims about drinking
It's
alcohol.
propaganda, all
Here's
of it.
little Timmy. Uh-oh. Looks like Timmy's gonna have his first drink. He's taking a small sip of whiskey, and Timmy has spontaneously combusted. The end. The woman's efforts weren't in vain.
That's
In
not how it
small towns
works.
across America, drugstores agreed to stop fulfilling prescriptions for alcohol.
What is this little part here? It looks like it doesn't belong to any state. That's the way the map makes it look like.
Men
Whatever,
committed
let's move
themselves to
on.
giving up drink. Inspired by the woman's moral fervor, some saloon owners closed their doors. The Women's Crusade and other temperance movements.
Okay, now... You don't have to permanently close the business. Just make sure people drink less. Create limits. You can only drink a certain amount of alcohol a day. Don't just completely shut down business. That's going to be terrible for the economy. If they're drinking that much alcohol, then that has to contribute to the American economy by a pretty big amount. So that's not exactly going to be good if you just get rid of it.
Were forcing people to reconsider alcohol's role in society, and more people began to side with the growing temperance movement.
Well, it's
Many
definitely
states
not
had
a
even
good
begun
role.
enacting their own dry laws that restricted the sale and use of alcohol. One of them was Kansas, where alcohol had been outlawed since 1881. Despite this, many illegal saloons remained open, and authorities had done just about nothing to stop them. One woman, disgusted by what she saw, decided...
I mean, to be fair, are you going to enforce this law? Actually, no, wait, this isn't even a law. Oh, no, wait, no, never mind. Fuck it. What am I saying? It was outlawed at this point. Who's going to enforce this, though? It takes money, time, people, and resources to enforce laws. If these people were all fucking addicts, they were all alcoholics who drank 6 to 7 gallons of pure alcohol per year, there's going to be a lot who will just keep getting illegal booze. And trying to enforce that would be impossible. You don't have the resources for that.
decided she would take the law into her own hands. And not just any woman, a terrifying, hatchet-wielding, sweet old lady named Carrie Nation. Armed with her trusty hatchet and a bag of what she called
Carrie,
smashers,
like
she
that
traveled from
woman
town to
from that
town
movie?
visiting saloons. But she wasn't there to get smashed. She was there to smash. The men could do nothing but cower as sweet little Carrie hulked out and tore the place to shreds.
I mean,
She
this
went
is
to
illegal,
Kiowa
just
and
arrest
Smashy
her.
smashed. Wichita, smashy smash. Topeka, smashy smash. On a couple of occasions, she was arrested, but each time they were
Good,
like, okay,
as
Carrie,
she should.
we're gonna let you go so long as you promise to be a good girl and not smash
Now
up any
that's
more
stupid.
saloons. Okay? Screw you, pig! Yeah, I think she's gonna be all right.
Honestly, with all the videos I see
smash,
from America, that
smash.
just sounds like the average
Carrie's
American.
tactics shocked the other members of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, but she assured them, and this is a quote, "Ladies, you do not know how much joy you will have until you smash, smash, smash." Carrie became a household name, and she hoped her unusual tactics would spread across the country. But unfortunately, many of the women
Oh, look at that. Now it's connected. Now it's part of whatever state this is. I feel like it should have just been made part of Texas because this just looks weird. Then again, all of America's states are basically just fucking squares here in the middle, which looks incredibly stupid anyway. Whatever, let's move on.
women's
Not
movements
the point of the video.
eventually slowed down. Why? Well, because of this kind of thing. Thelma, I ripped my pants again. Ugh, well, you'll have to sew them yourself because I'm going out protesting. What? I don't know how to sew. What if I burn the house down and get eaten by alligators? What? Don't be stupid, Mitch. Look, I've got to go. Call me stupid? She's the one who's stupid.
I mean, suing can't be that hard.
Stupid now.
I've done it myself.
See, while the women were out protesting, there was
I mean, it
nobody
was
to do
pretty
the cooking
crappy,
and
but-
cleaning and being seen and not heard, and they gradually had
Hey,
to return
it
to their
didn't
duties at home.
rip
But
apart.
where the women had got the ball rolling, a new movement was about to take that ball all the way to Washington, D.C. I'm talking about the Anti-Saloon League. The Anti-Saloon League was a political pressure group run by a very sweet-looking old man. But don't let that deceive you. This guy was an evil genius. While the women's movements were
Okay.
interested in a whole range of issues, Wayne Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon
Women's suffrage, prison reform, child welfare, sanitation, public health, alcohol, labor laws, international peace. Ha!
League only cared
Good
about
jokes.
enemy number one, Mr. Alcohol. And as a result, they were extremely effective. They were able to exploit the fears of the American people. And I mean everyone's fears. Here's how they did it. Hello, sir. Welcome to the Liberal Progressive Rally. Why don't you introduce yourself? Well, I'm Patty, and I'm an immigrant from Ireland. And
It's
tell me,
liberal.
Patty,
I already
do you
don't
drink?
like it.
Oh, yes. I drink a lot. See, folks, people like Patty come here looking for a better life, only to end up drunk in the gutter. Don't worry, sir. We're gonna help you. Hey, man, you're doing great. I just need you for one more thing. Hey, Christian conservatives. This is Patty. He's a
Oh,
dirty Catholic
okay.
Irish
So
immigrant who's come
he's
to
just
destroy America
spreading
with this
propaganda to
alcohol-fueled
both sides
debauchery.
of the political spectrum.
Workers were told alcohol was a capitalist ploy to keep them subjugated. Factory owners were told alcohol was making their irresponsible workers lazy. The black community was warned alcohol was hindering its progress, while racists were warned alcohol would turn black men into brutes. In one of the most confusing eras of American politics, totally opposing groups found themselves agreeing on at least one thing. Alcohol was bad. The Anti-Saloon League also made great use of propaganda, something Prohibition
I mean, to be fair, that's the only way you can get people from different sides of the political spectrum to agree. You need to give them a common enemy that threatens to destroy them both. Which is why America will probably never have peace. I would not be surprised if they had a civil war, and at the same time, honestly, it would be pretty entertaining to see that. No offense, Americans, but your mess that is politics is just fun for us non-Americans.
Prohibitionists have been doing for decades.
I'm
Take
sorry
this
if that feels
specimen, for
insulting
example, that once what
to
will
you,
happen
but
to you if you
it's
start
true.
drinking. Let's see. First you take a drink.
Your
you get
politics
little
are like a
rowdy.
free HBO
Okay,
Max
You make some
subscription.
new friends. Nice. Then you become homeless. You turn to crime. And...
Oh,
But the most effective tactic Wheeler used to force prohibition on America was pressure politics. In any election he could, Wheeler very successfully rounded up support against any politician who was in favor of alcohol. In Ohio alone, he had 70 state representatives and the popular Republican governor ousted from office and replaced with prohibitionists. Suddenly, every politician
Who
in
even is
America
this guy?
was afraid of Wayne Wheeler. Even those who enjoyed alcohol in private began pretending to be against it in public.
I mean, just lie, yeah,
Alcohol
just lie and
is
say you
delicious.
hate it, even though you don't.
I mean, malicious. Sorry, Wayne. I'm really drunk right now. Then it really hit the fan in 1917, when America found itself fighting in the First World War against Germany. Anti-German sentiment exploded. Sauerkraut became Liberty cabbage.
Germans
German
make
measles
beer.
became Liberty measles. And Dachshunds became the embodiment of evil. See, America? You've always been this way. The biggest brewers in America were German, and Wheeler saw to it that drinking alcohol
No
became
surprise.
akin to pro-German treason. The German brewers desperately tried to fight back, creating their own propaganda, presenting beer as a healthy beverage, one that you could even give to your kids. As you can imagine, it didn't go
Hell
down well.
nah.
President Wilson instituted some
kids?
temporary wartime prohibition measures to save grain for food, and with many in the country now in support of prohibition, all that was left was to make it law. One problem was that taxes on alcohol made up nearly 40% of the US government's annual revenue.
40%! I said before that just getting rid of alcohol would be terrible for the economy, but 40%? What the hell? What? You're telling me 40% was just alcohol alone?
And with many in the country now in support of prohibition, all that was left was to make it law. One problem was that taxes on alcohol made up nearly 40% of the US government's annual revenue. And the government wasn't just about to give
Actually, that makes the government look bad, because if one of your main sources is just one thing, that's really bad. It's like countries that discover oil but have nothing else. Once they run out of the oil, they're screwed. So here, once alcohol gets banned, they lose a shit ton of money.
that up. No problem. The Anti-Saloon League helped lobby for the creation of a new income tax on the American people. And just like that, the government was no longer reliant on alcohol. Prohibition was finally introduced to Congress in 1913, not just as a law, but a constitutional amendment. In 1917,
Can they
as
do
the
that?
House held their final vote on the Prohibition Amendment, Wheeler was watching from the gallery. You spineless cowards. I know
He's like
drink,
a fucking
yet here you are bowing
Roman
down to Ned Flanders up there.
emperor.
Look at him, like he's some kind of Caesar.
Yeah, Caesar.
Don't be so dramatic. I obviously don't think I'm Caesar. Now release the lion. In the end, Prohibition passed the House easily, 282 votes to 128, and the states ratified the new amendment by 1919. America, a nation obsessed with liberty and freedom, had just voluntarily given up its private right to choose whether or not to drink alcohol. We did it.
That doesn't
folks.
sound very
We
freedom
fixed
of you.
everything. America will be perfect forever. But you just dissolved America's 5th largest industry and lost tens of thousands of jobs for us immigrants. No, you idiot. You don't
immigrants.
get it. We helped
Who cares?
you, idiot. Ugh, I could really go for a beer. Oh, no. Immediately after Prohibition went into effect, alcohol consumption in America decreased as Americans followed the
Really?
law and tried not drinking. Man, if
That's
we're
not
gonna be
gonna last
law-abiding
long.
good boys, we need something else to fill the dark, lonely void that delicious beer once did. Well, how about we crack open a nice cold can of water? Hell yeah. Toss it over. Nah, this isn't doing it for me. Let's try knitting. This isn't filling the dark void at all. Wanna play some kites? Ah, screw it. Let's go get some illegal beer. Well, it seemed like many Americans supported Prohibition.
Yeah.
After the law went into effect, it seemed like just as many Americans intended to keep on drinking. And they would go on to
I mean, the politicians were replaced with people who were pro-prohibition, but the people, you can't just replace the people, you know?
find a variety of ways to break the new law. Here's a question for you. Do you like breaking the law?
Yes.
Well, shame on you. Or do you like saving money when you shop online? Then you should use Honey. Do you?
Sponsor time. I'm skipping this. I do love breaking the law. I pirate every song I download. It's pirated. Does anyone actually pay for music? If you pay for music, you're an idiot. There's no other way to say it.
Now where were we? Oh yeah. Punching Patty, passing Prohibition, and procuring pints. Pretty soon after the new law went into effect, the failures of Prohibition were already beginning to rear their ugly heads. For starters, the details of the new Prohibition law, written by none other than Wayne Wheeler himself, turned out to be more draconian than expected. Many Prohibition supporters only wanted to outlaw hard liquor and hoped beer would remain legal, but the Volstead Act outlowed anything over 0.5%. That would make Liberty Cabbage.
0.5?
Secondly, the new law was full of loopholes that Americans very quickly began to exploit. For example, while the sale and manufacture of liquor was illegal, drinking it wasn't.
Drinking is
And you
legal,
could also
huh?
keep any alcohol you had before the law went into effect. So many private clubs hoarded
Oh.
huge amounts of alcohol that saw them through the entire Prohibition period. Whiskey intended for
They must
medicinal
have gotten
purposes was
rich
also allowed,
off
and
of
doctors
that.
basically became bartenders. It looked as though a full-on epidemic had broken out, as there was a sudden surge in prescriptions for whiskey. Sacramental wines used by churches and synagogues were also permitted. Orders for
In
communion wine
church,
suspiciously
too?
skyrocketed by millions of gallons. And as rabbis had access to religious wine, suddenly everyone was becoming a rabbi. You had Rabbi Pat O'Leary, Rabbi LL Cool J, Rabbi Fluffy. But don't worry, I'm sure all these definitely legitimate religious figures couldn't possibly be selling wine in the back alley after Mass. Yep, definitely nothing strange going on here. New products also hit the shelves in stores, such as Vine Glow, a brick of dehydrated grape juice, itself not alcoholic, and therefore perfectly legal. But the packaging did contain a strangely
But
specific
you can
warning.
turn it into
After dissolving
wine.
the brick in a gallon of water, do not place the liquid in a jug in the cupboard for 20 days, because then it would turn into wine.
Oh
I'll take
my
1,000.
God.
Yes, sir. Now, at this point, I want you to think back for me, if you will, to the year 2005. You're the coolest kid around, and you convince your parents to rent the greatest movie of all time from your local Blockbuster. But the movie starts with a strange message. Something about not downloading a car? You immediately disregard that and hop on Kazaa to download the greatest song of all time, and in the process, drain your dad's bank account with copious amounts of ransomware. You were breaking
This is
the
what I
law,
talked about earlier.
bad boy or girl. But did anyone come to arrest you? No.
No.
That's my point. If no one's enforcing a law, while everyone's breaking it, is it really a law? And so it was with Prohibition.
Well, yes, but
See,
actually
the
no.
conservative-led governments
Or
of
would
the
it be,
decade
well, no,
were also
but
the kind of
actually
people
yes.
who believed in small government spending. So they'd passed a law that would be extremely difficult to enforce, but also
Oh, this
didn't
is
want
what I
to
was
spend
talking
any
about
of the money
earlier, with it
required
being
to
impossible
enforce
to
it.
actually
The newly created
enforce the
Bureau
law.
of Prohibition only had 1,500 agents to cover the entire country. That's one
That's-
agent for
that's
every
nowhere near enough.
70,666 Americans in a massive
Wow.
country with
At least half of those Americans drink. How is one man supposed to deal with a good 35,000 people who are breaking the law? It's impossible. It's like what I was saying earlier. You can't make a law that's impossible to enforce.
12,000 miles of coastline and one gigantic land border with Canada. Good luck, schmuckos. And all these clever little loopholes people were using to score illegal booze were only just the beginning. America was about to devolve into alcohol-fueled criminal chaos. By outlawing it, Prohibition had made alcohol a precious commodity. And
It's
millions
gonna
of
be
Americans
worth its
would
weight
become
in gold.
outlaws as they found a variety of ways to score illegal booze. For example, many Americans began making their own liquor. Illegal stills from making moonshine were found by Prohibition agents from the hills of Kentucky and the caves of Arizona to parking lots in major cities, and even in the homes of Prohibition-supporting politicians. Oh, come on now, fellas. I voted
Well,
for
I mean-
Prohibition.
Of course you're gonna find that. They just want to keep their jobs. Of course they don't actually care about the laws that are being put into effect. They voted for it because otherwise they might lose their job and be replaced with a pro-prohibition politician. So of course they're gonna vote for it, but in reality they don't want to. Which makes me wonder, if all the people who actually still drank alcohol, even though they voted for Prohibition, if all of those people decided to vote against it, would Prohibition even become a... would it have even happened?
I'm not gonna have an illegal still. What's this? That's my son, Freddy. Say hi, Freddy. Sir, this is obviously an illegal still. How dare you? Hey, what's this in the bathtub? That's bath water. Why does it taste like alcohol? Here's a better question. Why are you tasting my bathwater? Weirdo. Come on, Freddy. Let's get away from these perverts. To discourage moonshining, the government began adding extra toxins to many of the products moonshiners were using, which resulted in many cases of severe illness and death. But alcohol wasn't just...
Okay, so that totally isn't a crime. Just adding toxic stuff. Well, I mean, I guess it's America. Most of their food has stuff in it that's illegal in a lot of other countries. Yeah, no, never mind. They haven't changed.
being made at home. Along
You know, something that's quite interesting. I drank a can of Pepsi yesterday. It had 23 grams of sugar. The American equivalent, the same amount of fluid, it was 330 milliliters, had 41 grams of sugar. American food is just... It had almost... I mean, that Pepsi had almost twice as much sugar. That's ridiculous. No wonder the Americans are so fat. If their food is that bad. Because I'm sure
coastlines,
other
rum
food
runners
is the
smuggled
same
alcohol into
situation.
the country by sea. A floating supermarket known as Rum Row extended along the east coast just beyond America's maritime limit, and bootleggers frequently sailed out in small boats to pick up
Well,
shipments of
technically
booze.
they're not
These
inside
bootleggers could then be
America's
found
waters,
selling
so
their illegal
they
products
can be
everywhere,
there.
even in the halls of Congress. Wow, Pop. One day, I want to work here. Well, son, if you work hard and never give up, one day even you could be a massive hypocrite. Even President Harding was known to serve his cabinet bootlegged whiskey, and some bootleggers were so successful they became bazillionaires, such as Roy
Of course, because
Olmsted,
it's illegal.
an ex-cop
It's
who became one
highly
of
in
the biggest employers
demand.
in the Seattle area from smuggling booze. Unfortunately, all of his whiskey came from Canada. Yuck! All of this criminality was being made possible by copious amounts of corruption. Across the country, armies of government officials were persuaded to turn a blind
how
eye.
much has changed over the
Bootleggers became
years.
so rich, it was no problem to stuff a couple $1,000s into the front pocket of the police chief, or the mayor, or their disapproving mother. And some cops were getting almost as rich as the bootleggers. All right, men, everyone gather in. I've received word that one of you has been taking bribes from bootleggers. Any ideas who? Kevin, perhaps.
I wonder who it
Got
could
any
be.
thoughts? No, sir. Many police officers came from the same communities that
They
drank
all
a
look
lot,
innocent
and they
to
were
me.
about to arrest their own granddads for knocking back some homemade gin. But all this isn't to say there was no enforcement. plenty of government officials were doing their best to enforce the new laws, and some unlucky individuals received very harsh penalties, such as a Michigan mother who was sentenced to life in prison for small-scale moonshining. Cases like these were widely reported in the media.
Make alcohol, which is illegal, go to jail for the rest of your life. Kill someone in broad daylight. 15 years and we'll let you out. 7.5 with good behavior. American justice system. It was just as bad back then as it is today.
And only served to make Prohibition even more unpopular. But not just that, the media also loved to cover the exploits of the most famous bootleggers, turning them into national icons. One of the biggest bootleggers was a man named George Remus. Originally a lawyer, he watched as his bootlegger clients paid off enormous fines like it was nothing, and proclaimed bootlegging's the business for me. But unlike most bootleggers, Remus had big brain, and he came up with a pretty clever system. See, there were millions of gallons of liquor produced before Prohibition that were sitting in distillery warehouses, and it could only be sold with government permission to drug companies. So Remus set up his own
drug company. Yeah, exactly.
Then he set up his own transport company to transport the liquor. And then he would send his own men out with guns to intercept his own transport vehicles.
Oh.
And this would happen. Hey man, this is a stick-up. Oh no, please don't.
Yeah, I don't know. This could work for a while, but after like a few times, people would probably start realizing, hold on a minute, it's always this guy's alcohol which just gets robbed. Seems kind of suspicious. Let's investigate this. I don't know. I don't think that would work a long time.
I won't hesitate to shoot. Please, I have a wife and kids. Hand over all the whiskey, Fatty. Hey! Fatty isn't in the script, you jerk! After stealing all the whiskey from himself, he could then sell it for big bucks. The perfect crime. Unfortunately, Remus was eventually caught by a goody two-shoes Prohibition director in Indiana who wouldn't take Remus's bribes, and the government found Remus guilty of violating the Volstead Act 3,000 times. For 2 years as Remus sat in prison, his wife promised to take care of all of his money.
What?
Times. For 2 years as Remus sat in prison.
So that woman, that mother who had kids, gets life in prison for small-scale moonshining, but this guy gets 2 years for all of that? What? How is this justice?
His wife promised to take care of all of his money. And by take care of his
we
money,
know what that
she
means.
Have an affair with a Prohibition agent, sell off everything Remus owned, and file for divorce. When Remus finally got out and found his big fancy mansion empty with his wife gone, he reported.
This is his villain origin story, isn't it?
A few months later, during their divorce trial, he spotted his wife in a car in Cincinnati. Remus hopped in a cab and asked the driver to run her off the road. The driver was like, okay. Then Remus got out of the cab and shot his wife dead. He immediately handed himself into the police.
I agree with him. That was a good decision.
This time for murder.
She deserves it.
National sensation. Remus defended himself, claiming insanity, occasionally carrying out skillful questioning.
Does that actually work?
In the corner, but the nation felt bad for him. His wife had screwed him over.
Yeah.
So when after just 19 minutes of
if I was in the jury, I would declare him non-guilty. Because honestly, that bitch fucking deserved it. I wouldn't do the same. Personally, I would hire someone to do the killing for me, if anything, but I agree with him. I'm on his side.
The jury returned and declared him not guilty. The court erupted into celebration. And just to remind you, this guy bluntly admitted to murdering his wife. The American justice system.
Yeah, but she was a bitch.
As alcohol poured
so
into
who
the
cares?
Nation, a lot of it was going to
nothing of value was lost
that
when she died.
In popularity, a secret drinking establishment, so secret that from the outside they often look like ordinary shops or homes. So secret that you usually needed a password to get in. So secret that everybody knew about them. Speakeasies. And
so
once
it's
you were
not
in,
secret.
The party went all night long. Scantily clad flappers, snake ladies, jazz. It was a roaring time to be alive. Some publications even posted reviews of these illegal clubs, and bribes galore kept the party going. It seemed like half the police officers and federal agents in cities like New York were receiving
go back to the
kickbacks from
1920s for one day just to see what this was like.
Kevin Costner is going on here? Officer O'Hannity, taking bribes? Why am I not surprised? Prohibition director Simmons? For shame. Mom? What would Dad say? Ask him yourself. Dad would say, quit being such a wet blanket and let Daddy earn his tips. Anytime a speakeasy was shut down by authorities, it seemed like 3 more would just pop up elsewhere. And some neighborhoods were so full of them that one resident began hanging a sign to try to keep partygoers from constantly knocking on her door. It really seemed like the new laws regarding alcohol, in some places, were simply being ignored. And one Prohibition agent who traveled the country liked to see which city was the most defiant by timing how long it took for him to be offered a beer after he arrived. His winner? New Orleans, where a cab driver offered him a drink after just 35
1 minute?
seconds. Bravo!
35?
Many voices in Congress were already speaking out against
Jesus.
Prohibition and its failures, to display how ridiculous the whole thing was.
I mean, to be fair, that could just be... that's just reliant on chance. It's luck. You can't just say that it's like that in the entire state. He just had one encounter. Whatever.
One Republican congressman gathered the media to all come and watch him drink a homemade beer. When he asked a passing police officer if he'd like to arrest him, the officer said no. Hey Wayne, is all this what you had in mind? I thought we were going to make the country better, but it almost seems like it's worse. What do you mean?
Oh, it is
Alcohol
worse,
consumption
because
is
everyone's
down.
a criminal.
Well, that may be true in your small town world, but it says here drinking in some areas is
Drinking may be down on paper, but in reality it's up.
up, as are arrests for public intoxication, drunk driving, and incidents of liver cirrhosis. The general chaos has turned America into a nation of criminals with no respect for the law, and all these attempts at enforcement are just costing the economy valuable money and eating up judicial time.
A nation full of criminals who have no respect for the law. Let's look at modern day America. Not much has changed.
And resource release the lines. The social change and corruption that Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon League had been so eager to prevent, in the cities at least, was surging. See, when something's legal, you can usually regulate and control it. But make that thing illegal, and often anything becomes
It's free game.
Legal drinking age, gone. Mandatory closing hours for clubs and bars, gone. Other on
You can't have a legal drinking age if it's illegal. If drinking is illegal, there's no such thing as legal drinking age, because it's always going to be illegal no matter what age you are. So a 5-year-old could drink, and I mean, it's just as illegal as if a fucking 50-year-old was drinking. Women shouldn't get drunk, men and women shouldn't drink together, people shouldn't pee in their neighbor's mailbox while singing Danny Boy. That last one is very interesting.
Sociocultural rules surrounding alcohol.
I don't even know what Danny Boy is.
Gone. In speakeasies, different genders and ethnicities were beginning to mingle in a way they hadn't done before. The Roaring Twenties saw a monumental shift in culture, not least of all because now men and women could flirt in public without being damned for eternity. An outraged Wayne Wheeler did his best to make sure that anyone breaking the law was punished. He had even stricter...
Well, let's be honest, was that a change for the better? I don't think so. Look at modern day America. It was not a good change, it was a bad change.
Legislation put in place in New York. But all this did was clog up the justice system with petty drinking violations, and judges began letting everyone off with light fines, so the judges could get back to dealing with things that actually mattered. You know, things like murder. And there was plenty of murder. Because bootleggers and moonshiners were one thing, but Prohibition had given another kind of criminal an opportunity to make a fortune. Mobsters and gangsters. Hey, Fat Tony. Big news. Hey, Fat Joey. What's up?
Of course.
I just got
The
word from Fat
Italians.
Louie here that the government's outlawing alcohol. You know what that means. That means we're gonna be rich. Quick, call Fat Polly and let's go hijack a liquor truck now. All right. Hang on, let me tell my wife first. Hey, Fat Susan! No pizza for Fat Joey tonight, capiche? Stop calling me Fat Susan.
Mamma mia.
Come on. Rival gangs began
fucking
to
love
battle in America's
Italians.
cities, raiding each other's transports, assassinating rivals, and trying to take control of their city's illicit booze trade. Every city had its top dog. Detroit.
I mean, these
had the
days you
Purple
have the
Gang.
same
New
stuff,
England
but with
had Charles
drugs
King
instead.
Solomon. But no city was as infamous for gang violence and murder as Chicago. The city had multiple gang factions, and at first, they agreed to stay in their own neighborhood. New England had Charles King
Detroit
Solomon, but gang factions.
and Chicago.
at first,
Ah, so Detroit and Chicago were just always a shithole. That's not a recent thing. That's just always been a thing. Okay, good to know.
they agreed to stay in their own neighborhoods. But the thing about criminals is that they're criminals, and the agreements inevitably broke down. One day, the leader of the Italian Southside gang was walking along the street when this happened. And he was like, you know, I think
Damn.
I'm done with this, and left for New York, leaving his crime empire to
Left
his
for New
chief
York,
enforcer,
more like
none
left
other
for
than
for
Al
6 feet under.
Capone. Having been knifed in the face in his younger years, Capone earned himself the name Scarface. Although interestingly, he hated that nickname and preferred to be called Snorky. Snorky was ruthless, just like any other gang leader in America. But what set him apart from others, the reason he's become synonymous with 1920s gang warfare, is this. Most other gang leaders would try to keep a low profile because, you know, they're killing and murdering and stuff. But Capone lived for the fame and kept an extremely high public profile, frequently speaking with the media about his exploits and presenting himself as a gracious host, providing Chicago with good times. No need to thank me, fellas. I just provide the city with a valuable commodity while doing away with the competition. You mean you murder people? Whoa, who said anything about murder? I just, you know, force my rivals underground. When you do the thing with the hands, it seems like you're talking about murder. Whoa, look at you with the brains. No, I just help people retire.
Forever.
From life, so murder. Whoa! Al Snorky Capone was somewhat of an enigma. Brutal in how he dealt with enemies, but in front of the camera, he was all smiles. One day, he'd be ordering hit after hit. The next, he'd be signing, but in front of the camera, he was all smiles. One day, he'd be ordering hit after
Mario
hit.
Luigi.
The next, he'd be signing autographs in Wrigley Field. One day, he'd be bludgeoning members of his own gang with a baseball bat for conspiring against him. The next, he'd be playing Santa at a nearby parochial school. And no murder could ever be traced back to him. Just like every other criminal, he stuffed the pockets of city officials with cold, hard cash. And any who did try to oppose him sometimes found themselves being thrown down the steps of City Hall in broad daylight. Problem solved. The public couldn't get enough of Capone. He quickly became a household name as people romanticized the gang life he lived. And this became a source of concern for the people at the very top. President Hoover? What is it now, Miles? I'm busy.
Crime being romanticized definitely isn't a good thing.
Crime? How long's that been happening?
It's only going to inspire more crime and
what? Would you
more people
like
will
me to
just
blame it
break
on
the
the
law.
Democrats again? No, Miles,
Not like
I
it
want you to
matters.
blame it on squirrels. Yes, the Democrats. Now stop wasting my time. Since having a
That's a thing that I always hate about American politics. If there's a problem, the Democrats blame it on the Republicans, or the Republicans blame it on the Democrats. I mean, I just hate American politics in general because they're all retarded, but...
crime lord controlling public officials and winning the hearts of the people probably wasn't a good thing. Hoover
I'm
personally
not here to
ordered
go
that
on a
something
rant
be
about
done
politics,
this
so I'll
Capone
just
fellow.
leave that
But
alone.
before he knew it, President Hoover was also dealing with another major problem. You know him, you love him, woman. The Prohibition era had been going on for nearly a decade.
It all
and
comes
anyone
back
with
to
a
the
brain
women
could see
again.
that it really wasn't going very well. One person with a brain was Pauline Sabin, an extremely influential and rich woman who served on the Republican National Committee, fundraised for Republican presidents, and had a secret wine room in her giant mansion. She initially supported Prohibition, but was now disgusted at the chaos it had created, and she
I can't understand that. How can you actually support it if you're breaking it? Like, someone voting for Prohibition while not actually believing in it and still drinking alcohol, I can understand. They're just voting for it because they want to keep their jobs and because it makes them look better. But if you actually believe in it, yet you don't follow it, it's like, what are you doing? Like, if I was a politician, I would vote for Prohibition, but I wouldn't follow it because I don't believe in it. But she believes in Prohibition, still drinks though. So like, what? It's just
began a
stupid.
new women's movement. This time, not for
Fucking
Prohibition,
hypocrite.
but against it. Being the extremely influential woman she was, her new organization gained nearly 1.5 million members within 2 years, 5 times that of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She hated that the WCTU claimed to speak for all women, and she began calling for the repeal of the 18th Amendment. President Hoover, I helped fund your campaign, and now I want you to end Prohibition. Miles, what is it I say when I'm not going to do anything? You'll look into it,
We'll take it into
sir.
consideration.
Oh yeah, that's right. Pauline, I'll look into it. Sabin gave speeches on the steps of Congress and helped start a growing push among the American people against Prohibition. But Hoover, a prohibitionist himself, wasn't budging. Then, on
But
the
he
20th of
drinks,
February
doesn't he?
1929, something happened that shocked the nation. Men, thought to be working for Al Capone, tricked some Irish mobsters into meeting them at a garage in Chicago, thinking they were there to purchase hijacked whiskey. Instead, the mobsters were lined up against the wall by men dressed as police, and they were shot. The
Damn.
Valentine's Day massacre had people outraged. It was cruel, and almost felt like American mobsters had finally crossed a line.
How is this any worse than what they've been doing up until this point? It's still just murder. It's the same thing they've been doing for years now. Is it really that different? Like,
People were sick of the violence, and in part, they blamed Prohibition for helping to
we
create
want
it.
beer.
The pressure on Hoover to do something was steadily increasing. Fine. Miles, I want you to put a report together to see if this whole thing is working. You mean the thing where
It's
mobsters
not.
are becoming increasingly powerful and massacring each other in the streets and everyone is disregarding the law and half our public officials are corrupt and taking bribes? That thing? Yeah, I want it. And everyone is disregarding the law and half our public
let's
officials
listen to that last one. The law and half our public officials are corrupt and taking bribes. Not much has changed since these times.
corrupt and taking bribes? That thing? Yeah, I want to know if it's
Well,
working.
to be
or
fair,
not,
every
Miles.
country has
Stop
that problem.
wasting my time. Hoover continued to drag his feet on Prohibition, but after the Valentine's Day massacre, he was still determined to do one thing. He wanted Al Capone in prison. Since Capone had been so careful, the FBI were having a hard time charging him with anything, but eventually, they got him. Capone, we know you're supplying Chicago with alcohol and you've been involved in countless murders. Whoa, look at you with the crazy talk. I ain't done none of that stuff. But you're rich, right? You're damn
They're probably
right.
gonna get him on something
So where'd all
stupid.
the money come from, Capone? All right, I'll let you in on a little secret, but you gotta promise not to tell anyone, okay? I don't pay my taxes. Whoa! For all of his
They
murder,
got him on
the IRS
tax
finally got
evasion?
Capone on tax evasion. At his trial, he didn't seem too
Holy
concerned though,
crap.
and spent most of his time having a laugh with his lawyers. Hey Capone, I gotta know, why are you so confident you're gonna win here? Well, Your Honor, because I'm an honest man with a big heart who's passionate about
Sure.
working for the good of the people.
What's
And
the
also
real
because
reason?
I threatened the entire jury's families. Luckily, at the last
Oh.
minute, the judge replaced the entire jury pool with a new one that Capone's men hadn't yet got
Ooh.
to, and Capone was found guilty. He was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, the harshest penalty ever given to a
11?
tax
Oh,
evader.
They
But
did
even
get
with
him for
Capone locked
tax
away, the
evasion.
violence in Chicago and
Not
other cities
murder.
continued, and in response, the movement against Prohibition continued to grow. And the final nail in Prohibition's coffin came in 1929. After a decade of booming economic growth under 3 Republican presidents,
Crash.
the stock market plummeted, and America was thrown into the grips of the Great Depression. It was an awful time. 1 out of every 5 workers, 15 million people, would lose their jobs. Half the nation's banks failed.
Jeez.
Temporary shantytowns were built for the broken homeless in public parks. Suddenly, very few people had time to care about Prohibition. Expensive enforcement of an unenforceable law didn't seem like that big of a priority.
It would
when
just be a
people were
waste of
having their
money.
Homes repossessed and losing their life savings. And many
You could
began
spend
to
that
argue
money to
that
try and
repealing
help these
Prohibition
people.
would create vital jobs and tax revenue for the government. Yet President Hoover doubled down. Here's that report you asked for, sir. Gimme. Prohibition is great. Fantastic news.
At
Sir,
destroying
it says
the
here
country.
Prohibition is great at undermining the rule of law in America. Miles,
Close
it
enough.
says the word great.
I was
That
close.
means good. Now stop wasting my time! The public, increasingly shocked at the violence they saw in the streets, the corruption they saw in the government, the general disregard for the law, and now an economic calamity, had had enough. For his re-election, Hoover faced a Democratic candidate who promised the corruption they saw in the
Let's go back for a second.
The public, increasingly shocked at the violence they saw in the streets, the corruption they saw in the government, the general disregard for the law, and now an economic calamity, had had
Am I looking at the 1920s and 1930s or at modern day? Because honestly, I can't tell.
enough. For his re-election, Hoover faced a Democratic candidate who promised to finally do something about Prohibition, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Crowds cheered as FDR made his campaign speeches promising to modify the Volstead Act, and Pauline Sabin, a lifelong Republican, along with her 1.5 million supporters, endorsed Roosevelt. And on Election Day, it was a landslide. Before FDR had even taken office, Republicans in Congress began the process of passing the 21st Amendment to repeal Prohibition. One of FDR's first acts as president was to pass the Beer Permit Act, which made beer legal while the new amendment was being ratified. In 1933, with the passage of the 21st Amendment, Prohibition was finally over, and the people celebrated like they'd just won a world war. Bars and taverns were packed. The WCTU
Well,
were
they would win a
inconsolable.
world war
Wayne
like
Wheeler
10 years later.
was dead, and the celebration, particularly in America's cities, was intense. Heading into the mid-1930s, the effects of Prohibition were clear to see. From now on, culture around drinking had changed, with men and women drinking together, not in saloons, but in bars and taverns. The crime syndicates that had been given so much power through Prohibition remained powerful as
they moved on to
other
drugs.
things. Some states opted to remain dry, with Oklahoma only repealing its prohibition laws in 1959. To this day, there
59?
are still counties in America with some form of
They
prohibition.
waited until
So what
the
did we
Cold
learn
War.
today, kids? What's the big lesson here? What's the moral of this story that we can all take away and apply to our day-to-day lives? Maybe that you shouldn't force your own morals on others who don't share them? Maybe that if you tell Americans not to do something, that's
They
the
will
one
do
thing
it.
they'll definitely do. Or maybe there is no lesson. Maybe we're all just a bunch of dumb, stinky idiots, and we're all doomed. The
I
end.
like that last one. That last one was probably the most truthful. Well, this certainly opened my eyes about just how bad Prohibition actually was, because I didn't know it caused this many problems for the Americans. And am I glad this was never a thing in my country. Well, anyway, hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next video.